Hi guys, and welcome to my masterclass on quantum wealth and specifically how to know if you are coded for quantum wealth. So my name is Hannah Wilson. I am a mystic business and wealth coach and the CEO of ETHERA Academy. And basically, I help mystics make more money in their mission-led businesses by really mastering the art of messaging, sales, marketing, and getting everything in really beautiful alignment so that they can be nourished by their business and by their mission. So, I have been a spiritual teacher for around 10 years now, and now I am specifically working with entrepreneurs, but I have a background in being a spiritual and energetic mentor, an intuitive guide. At one point, I started downloading these timelines and codes and started the Keepers of the Codes group, which grew to thousands of people in a very, very short amount of time, just a few months, and basically was bringing through all this information on why we were all being activated at this time in, the collective evolutionary process of our planet. So I've done a few different things, but always the through line of my work has really been mastery in your mission. So, I wanted to talk today about the quantum wealth codes and what your experience in life may be like if you are someone who is coded for quantum wealth. And why this matters is because those of us who are coded for quantum wealth generally do not relate to and experience money, specifically wealth overall, but money in the same way as like what is considered to be normal in the linear paradigm that we live in, right? So basically, in the linear paradigm, it's very much like, you know, you go to school, you learn, you get a job, you save your money, you put a deposit on a house, you maybe have some investments, like this kind of thing. It's really like step by step, and you do these things to build assets and wealth and a portfolio, right? Whereas when you're coded for quantum wealth, it's not necessarily the same experience. In fact, instead of being like step by step linear, it's probably all over the shop. And also, this concept of building step by step is a linear process, whereas like the quantum wealth codes, sometimes when it comes to the quantum, especially like the concept of a quantum leap, it might look like something randomly, like we have this random leap, but actually it is a process of things building up over time, except that things don't necessarily seem related. Like the steps on your journey are not necessarily linear. It's not one foot after the other. It's not slow, consistent, predictable build. It's still kind of like you're called to this thing, and you're called to that thing, and then you do this, and then you do that. And this is very much the quantum wealth paradigm, right? So I want to preface this by saying that wealth is obviously much more than money. It's much more than, your assets, your portfolio. And it's also different for each person. Each person has a different definition of what wealth really is. But I don't think any of you guys watching this who've been called to this need me to explain that, because typically people who are coded for quantum wealth, they understand that wealth is so much more than money. In fact, money is generally kind of low on the priority list when it comes to wealth for a lot of people coded for quantum wealth. And yeah, that's not necessarily how it stays once you have this realization, but usually it is kind of very low. It's not like the main thing that you're like, oh my God, money is my God, right? So I'm gonna get into it. I've got notes here. I'm just reading off my notes. That's why I'm looking down. Okay, so the first way that you can know that you're coded for quantum wealth is that your journey with money has not necessarily been smooth or easeful. So, in the chapter that I wrote in the Revolutionary Icons book, I spoke about how when I was called on a grid working mission to the UK, to Avalon in the UK, in Glastonbury, to unlock the true abundance codes, I literally overdrew my account booking the flight, right? And the whole time was like really challenging financially. And it was literally, I was rolling on a wing and a prayer. And that was literally the medicine And in that experience, I was taken like down into the money lines of humanity and um, was really shown this very in-depth experience of all the shadow and the distortion that we have in the money lines and as humanity around money, right? So it was like my journey with money my whole life up until very recently has been really hard, right? It's felt really, really challenging. When I was growing up, we didn't really have money. Like, my parents moved away when I was 18. They moved out of home and I was working and paying rent and in that cycle since then, right? So a lot of the time we think like, oh, well, this can't be for me because like I haven't really had money or I haven't had a really good experience with money. It's been very up and down or it's been very challenging, but that's actually usually a sign that you are coded for quantum wealth because always the things that are the biggest medicine that we walk with in our life is generally the thing that we're here to master, right? The second one is that you can magic money up out of nowhere, like you can call it in. Maybe you can do it consciously, or maybe it just happens, but you struggle to hold money. So I will just say, when it comes to this concept of holding money, I spent many years being like, I need to learn how to hold it. I can only call it in, then it goes out again. I need to learn how to hold it. And I then, when working with the quantum wealth codes, realized like, I can have money in savings or investments or whatever, but the idea of holding it wasn't actually helpful energetically or from my mind, because money actually likes to flow, right? So when I think about like money comes in, money goes out, money comes in, it goes into savings, it goes to investments, it goes to things it needs to pay for, and there's this flow to it rather than holding it, right? But if you are able to bring it in, but then you can't hold it, and especially if you're able to, like, if you have something that like you need the money for, you want to sign up to a program or you want to, like whatever the thing is, and the money just randomly comes in from somewhere, you get a refund from something, you get like a random uh I've had this one happen to me and to some of my clients where they move out of somewhere and then years later they get a letter saying that they received a refund from the utility bills that they had somehow overpaid. Or just like completely random things coming out of nowhere, or someone's like, hey, I want to pay my whole payment plan off today in full, or whatever. It's like you're literally magicking the money out of nowhere and you maybe don't even know how you do it, but it's hard for you to hold it. That's another sign. Now, the other part of this one is that you can call it in for the things that you need, but not necessarily the things that you want. Okay. And now this one's a little bit tricky because when you are someone who, like serves medicine and does deep energetic work, what you see as your needs are probably what a lot of people would see as like wants or like nice to haves or like not even important. You're probably like, no, I need the good filtered water, right? Like I need energy work or body work or whatever it is. Like I need mentorship. I need the device in my house that offsets the electromagnetic frequencies, like things like that that other people would look at as that's not a need. But for you, you know that what is paramount is keeping yourself in alignment, keeping yourself grounded, keeping your energy clear, keeping yourself in a state where you can show up and do your work and be, the vessel and the conduit and the channel. And so that for you is actually a need, but you might think that you're like, I can call in things like money for things that I want because you're thinking that those are wants, but actually the way that your brain is holding them is like those are non-negotiables. Okay? So this ability to like you can magic money up out of nowhere for things that are needs. And I want to say like mentorship, joining a program, like anything that actually will be expansive for your energy and your evolution, that is going to go into that needs category for you. So you'll be able to call the money in from nowhere, magic it out of nowhere without even really necessarily trying. But if it's something that you don't really think is like important to your mission, you probably will have a much harder time calling in the money for it. which can change. It doesn't have to be that way forever, but that's just one of the signs that I see. Okay, so the third one is that you have felt wrong or behind, or like you just don't get money. So wrong or behind specifically in terms of like money, investments, savings, taxes, like any of like, investments, like the standard money things, finance things, you might have felt like I just don't get that stuff. Like I'm just not that kind of person. That's just not for me. And, maybe even felt like you're bad at that stuff, or you always get it wrong, or like you're dumb or behind, like that kind of feeling. Because the thing is that all of those things are linear paradigm money, right? So you don't get it. It doesn't at all mean that you're bad with money or that you're wrong or dumb or behind. It just means like you were never actually meant to get that. You were actually never meant to operate in that. You literally have a different operating system. It's like if you had like an Apple phone, but you're trying to run the Android system on it, like you're trying to download Android apps, and then they're not working, and you're like, oh, the apps are dumb. No, it's just like literally a different operating system. Well, that's you within the linear wealth paradigm, the linear money paradigm. You're not meant to get it. You're actually meant to be building something different and an entirely different way. The next one is that the rug has likely been pulled out from underneath you many times in your life, right? And a really, really niche one that I found a lot with people who are coded for quantum wealth is that they have moved house a lot. And there has been this feeling of like instability around the concept of home and housing and like where you live in your, let me let me try that sentence again. The place where you physically live doesn't necessarily feel like the definition of home to you. Home to you maybe feels like something different, right? It feels like somewhere that's maybe like off planet, or it's in a different time, or it's a certain way of like feeling, or it's people that you're around, or communities that you find yourself in. It's like your house as much as it's your home, and you probably do like love being in it, and you're a bit of a homebody, like you need to recharge that way from the world. But it's constantly changing, so it's like you don't necessarily settle in that way. That one's really niche. But this concept of like the rug having been pulled out from underneath you, and these big major life events happening. Like my mom died when I was 8, but even before that, when I was like 5, we moved away from where I grew up in the mountains, and we moved to the city. And then when we got here, my parents were like, by the way, we're getting divorced, and mum has cancer. And then she died. My parents moved away when I was 18, and were like, you can't come with us, in a way that was like quite jarring and shocking to me. That kind of makes it sound worse than what it was. But that's how it felt to me at the time. That was my experience of it, right? As an 18-year-old who feels like everything's about you. Now, as an adult, I can see it, and a parent myself, I see it slightly differently, but that was the experience. It was like the rug was pulled out from underneath me. And so many different experiences of this over and over and over throughout life, of just feeling like completely blindsided by something happening. And the reason that this happens to you is that this is actually life's way of like quantum leaping you into the next thing. It's like literally pulls the rug out from under you, and then you go. But if you don't understand how to work with those mechanics, which most of us, hadn't, especially when we were young, it can be really challenging to actually accept that this is a quantum leap, that this is a catalyst. And so you might have this like baseline kind of fear that operates there around the rug being pulled out from underneath you. And until I had this realization about like it's literally the catalyst to the quantum leap, I really experienced that like the more money I got, the more safety and security and predictability that I built with, my financial situation, and monthly recurring revenue in my business, and that kind of stuff. The louder this fear got, the more intense this anxiety about the rug being pulled out from underneath me became. And yeah, this realization that like, oh, actually, this is literally the catalyst into the quantum leap, and it was every time. I just didn't know how to work with it. Took that fear away almost instantly, because I was like, I don't actually have to fear the rug being pulled out from underneath me, because if it were to happen, then I'm just like, oh, cool, let me leap, right? But yeah, that experience and that feeling of like you're afraid of that happening, you're trying to prevent that from happening in your life is one way to know that you are coded for quantum wealth. The last one that I've got is that you don't necessarily feel scared about money. You know how a lot of people have like a lot of fear and scarcity and anxiety around money? You don't necessarily have that, but so like you trust, right? You trust. Money always comes. Money always comes for the things that you need one way or another. Someone gifts you something, somebody, like comes in and just presents a solution, or money shows up out of nowhere, or it's fine, right? Like deep down, actually, like you're good and it always sorts itself out, but you don't necessarily feel fully like nourished and held and supported by money, right? It's like it comes in and then it's there for the thing that you need it for, but then it's kind of like you're back to this position of not necessarily feeling like super nourished by it, right? But I think when you think about it, you're like, well, I'm not someone who's fearful with money. I feel really trusting. But it's like there's almost like a coldness to it. Like, yes, I trust, but I don't feel like, like, oh, money's got me, you know? Okay, and so there's often an association here that like the way that you can magic money out of nowhere is like when you do that, it's like you're powerful, you're in your power. But when you have to like hold money steadily, and there's this concept of holding again, it feels like you're responsible, right? So it's like when I just call money in and I magic it out of nowhere and it just like comes in at the 11th hour, then I feel really powerful. And when I have to hold money steadily, I feel responsible and that feels like a weight. And so that often creates this kind of like feast to famine cycle where, you can bring it in, but it has to go straight back out. And I think a lot of people talk about this, in like mainstream abundance work around, well, mainstream, like spiritual conscious abundance work of like, oh, you need to work with your nervous system to feel safe to hold the money. And I don't disagree with that. I think that's absolutely a part of it. But I also think that when you understand that, well, you don't actually need to feel this weight that I have to hold it and I have to be smart with it and I have to do the right thing with it. And you actually can allow it to flow. That's going to bring your feast to famine cycle down to like this. It's a flow rather than like these big waves and troughs, right? So I hope that this was helpful. If you were having any like pings, any little ahas, like, oh my God, that is me. I want you to know that something about being coded for quantum wealth is that you actually do already know how to work with money in the quantum wealth paradigm, right? Which actually is available to us now. It's not like somewhere we're going. It's not like, oh, we're gonna, transcend out of 3D into 5D and then we're there. Like it is available now. But you need to understand how to work with it, and you need to understand that you probably have a lot of deconditioning to do. One of my children screaming out there with their father, but he was yelling. You probably have a lot of deconditioning to do from like essentially the way that you were raised, we all were raised in the linear money paradigm, meaning that like, we were constantly bombarded with this message that what felt natural to us was wrong because it is kind of wrong in the linear paradigm because they don't work in the same way. So you don't necessarily need to like learn how to work with money or quantum wealth, but you do need to like decondition and actually understand the way that it works and to really activate those codes. They're already there, but you do need to activate them and consciously turn them on. So if you want to know more about that, I have a whole range of work with the quantum wealth codes. Probably the most in depth is Quantum Wealth Queen, and you can get in touch with me if you want some more information about that. But I do have a few other little touch points. But basically, just like the one thing that I would really say is to lean in more to the way that you naturally intuitively feel to work with money. Because in the linear paradigm, it is like restrict, save, spend less than you earn. Like there's this real like hold it like this, even like this concept of you need to hold your money. Whereas in quantum wealth, you will often be called to spend, invest, like donate, or like actually keep that flow with money. And it doesn't always necessarily make sense. It might not seem like a smart move. It might not seem like it's the most like you can see the steps of how that's going to work out. It doesn't necessarily make sense because it's not linear, it's not in the mind, it's quantum, right? So I would just really advise you like lean in and trust what you're actually really truly being called to do. And that's how you begin to really like find that flow with the quantum wealth codes. All right, so if this was helpful or if you were like had light bulbs going off, like the little mind blown emoji, like this is me, I would love to hear from you. Please get in contact with me. I always love to know who's out there, feeling the same thing and being activated by these codes. So you can just get in touch with me on Instagram. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you spending this time with me and exploring the quantum wealth codes like this. And I hope you have a beautiful day. Thanks.